Well, I knew it was going to happen sooner or later, and in fact, I'm surprised that it happened this late in the game here in Zone 3, Zone 4, Minnesota, but it is going to freeze tonight. So that means I need to get busy and get a bunch of stuff out of my garden before it gets damaged. Now, the key is not everything should be harvested. There's actually some things that taste better after a few frosts, so I thought it'd be fun to go through everything together. We'll harvest what needs to be harvested. We'll talk about what I'm leaving. And a big part of harvest day today is going to be my winter squash, like my butternut squash and my pumpkins. Those are huge crops for us as far as self-sufficiency goes. It's a great healthy starch that we depend on quite a bit, so I need them to last as long as possible. So we'll go in depth on my curing strategy so that we can make sure that those store really well. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Katie. Again, I'm a Zone 3, Zone 4 Minnesota gardener, and let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing we're going to be harvesting are the peppers. Those are definitely a warm loving plant. They don't tolerate a frost very well. These are my poblanos. These guys aren't very big. I was hoping that they'd be a little bit bigger by now. Of course, I've already harvested quite a few. These aren't the ideal size, but they'll still work. So I'm going to go ahead and pull most of these off. The itty bitty ones like these, I'm just gonna leave. Even though we're gonna get a frost tonight, there's a good chance these plants won't die. And I will probably cover these just because the next week's forecast looks okay. So there's a chance that these guys are gonna recover and keep producing a little bit, but I do want to protect the little bit of at least halfway decent fruit that I do have so that they don't get frost damage. There really aren't all that many peppers left on these plants anyways, so even if they don't survive, I won't be that upset. I have a bunch already preserved and tucked away. And if you're new here, this was one of my pepper experiments. This bed has been doing okay. They're halfway decent, but my best bed, which you'll see up by the cabin, outperformed everything out here in the in-ground garden. I'm honestly surprised. I've been able to grow Scotch bonnets. That's been a really fun surprise because I love them and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to grow them here in Minnesota. We have a few cayennes still in here that are red. I really noticed that the pepper production started to go down this month with the daylight hours getting a lot shorter and the cooler nights. So these guys are mostly on their way out anyways. Let's go see if there's any other peppers on this side of the garden. The bed over here was my other experimental bed. So this one's different from the other one because it was mulched and I found that they didn't do as well. It just kept the soil temp too cool and they really like that heat. So you can see everything is kind of yellowed and stunted. I've since taken the mulch off, but the damage has been done and now it's cold again. So they're just not very happy. These are my Corno de Toro peppers. I love these. These I grow instead of bell peppers. They taste very similar. They just grow a whole lot better for me. Here's a few more red ones. And another one. The green ones are edible too. They're just kind of more bland, just like a green bell pepper versus a red bell pepper. I'll go ahead and save this one. Oh, looks like I actually do have a bell pepper. That's pretty exciting. These are few and far between for me. So I think that's it for this pepper section. And while we're on the pepper train, let's go ahead and go up to the cabin and get the rest of the peppers up there. Okay, now look at these pepper plants. Night and day compared to the ones in the in-ground garden. So my hypothesis is that they just got a little bit more heat being in a raised bed instead of in-ground, because this is the same soil and same compost that I have in my in-ground garden. And these guys are just looking awesome. So we should be able to get quite a few more peppers out of these plants. I mean, you can just see the difference. Look at all of these cayennes. So we have a bunch to harvest from here. We'll definitely need to make another batch of fermented hot sauce. That's largely what I do with the cayennes. I'll put my recipe in the video description if you'd like to give it a try. And then these in here are my red picnic peppers. These are so good. Highly recommend growing them. They're just super sweet, just so good for snacking. So I got a couple out of that one. The hard call is on these half-ripe ones. So there's a lot of these almost red peppers on here, and either I can gamble and just cover this and hope for the best, and then these will be ripe in a few days maybe, or I pick them now, and I don't feel like they ripen too much once they're picked for peppers. So I think what I'll do is I'll pick a couple and I'll leave a couple and we'll just see what happens. So I'll just pick the most red one, like that one, and maybe this guy that's sticking off to the side, where these are kind of more buried and will have a little bit more insulation. Now this Scotch bonnet plant is doing so good. There's so many of these in here. These make the best hot sauce if you love hot sauce, because not only does it have a good kick, but the flavor is unreal. A bunch more of those going in. We have way better poblanos on this one as well. Puts the others to shame, that's for sure. So definitely going to be doubling my efforts on raised beds for next year when it comes to peppers, because this has just been way better, that's for sure. We have some jalapenos over here. I've been making tacos a lot lately and I just love slicing these up on there. Jalapenos also freeze dry really well, so I like to slice them and then freeze dry them, and then they're easy to sprinkle into anything that I'm cooking year round. Is that good? Do you want jalapenos? I don't think so. Okay, so I think we did pretty well on the pepper front. I'm happy with this, so I'm gonna move this up to the front porch and we'll start the next one. All right, as we walk back to the garden, I thought we'd talk tomatoes because I think that is next. Tomatoes, on the other hand, they do ripen on the counter, so I can grab pretty green ones and they will continue to ripen in the cabin. The only thing is they'll have a little bit less nutrition though, and I'm all about nutritional value. So I don't know, and I feel like I already have so many tomatoes. I don't have to absolutely squeeze every last one. So let's get in there and we'll make our game plan. Okay, so here is my row of tomatoes. I have two different varieties. I have the Amish paste tomato, which is not looking great. I have a video on how much I hate these tomatoes. We're gonna give that one to the chickens. They'll love that. And then I also have plum regals here. These are both my paste tomatoes. So I'm definitely gonna grab those for canning. But my strategy for building my box here is I'm gonna put my plum regals in the bottom. They're firmer, so they're not gonna totally get smashed too bad, where the Amish paste tomatoes, they are so mushy. So we'll do the plum regals first and then do the Amish paste on top. Otherwise we're gonna get a total mess. Now, even my prized Amish paste tomatoes, not all of them are perfect. So throw those out for the chickens. And I'm just grabbing any tomatoes that have a little bit of red to them. Now, something like this is questionable. Maybe. Yeah, I probably will. I'm gonna let it ripen. But something like this, no. It's not gonna have the same flavor and quality and nutrition if it ripens on the counter. It's better than nothing. So if you're really short on tomatoes, absolutely do it, but I have plenty. So I'm just gonna leave this and see if maybe it'll ripen if it survives the frost. Everything else we'll grab and bring inside. Okay, so this is everything I have left of the plum regals, and now I'm gonna go through and start picking off the Amish paste tomatoes and put those guys on top. We'll see how many we get. And the chickens are just loving all these little treats. At first I wasn't sure how I would feel about having the chickens so close to the garden. I had a little bit of space at our last homestead, and now I really like it. They're like my little garden buddies and they enjoy all the treats. I'll take this one. Looks okay. Anything like this, I'm just throwing to the chickens. This is not gonna store well. So I think that's it for the paste tomatoes. And actually I went through and harvested a bunch 2 days ago. So my counter is already full. So we'll just add this to the pile and we are definitely going to be canning this weekend. The cucumbers most definitely won't tolerate a frost very well. They've really been slowing down with the shorter days and the cooler temps, but I'll see if I can find any. Here we go. We have one little cucumber there. I'll save this baby here. We'll see if maybe it'll survive the frost. Probably not, but we have one. Add it to the box here. Oh, looks like one escaped me. This one's a little bit more ripe than I like, so we'll give that one to the chickens as well. this one looks pretty good. We'll save that one. And I think that's it for the cucumbers. Those are pretty much done. The other thing we'll need to do are cherry tomatoes. So these guys are doing awesome. Definitely will want to get in there and pull off any of them that I can. These freeze dry super, super well. So I've been slicing them in half and freeze drying them. And then they're just super easy to use all winter. So you can throw them into soups, in quiche. You can use them as croutons. They're just so delicious. So hopefully we'll get enough for a whole freeze dryer load. These take a while to dry. So I really like to do all 4 trays being cherry tomatoes, because if I try to combine items, like let's say I try to freeze dry like a couple trays of zucchini and a couple trays of cherry tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes will never finish in time. They need different times. So hopefully we'll get enough to do an entire load of cherry tomatoes. It's actually looking kind of dark over there, like it might rain. And if that's the case, freezing rain, that's like the kiss of death. You know, if it's dry, cold, and you can put blankets on stuff, you have a much better chance of making it through that. But freezing rain and everything soaking wet, and nah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. And same thing as before, I'm taking anything that's pretty red, anything that's split or past its prime, I'm throwing out to the chickens, and they are loving that. Okay, so this is the final haul for the cherry tomatoes. These are Mountain Vineyard F1. Love these. They don't typically split and they're just delicious. So cool. So next up are the green beans. Those do not freeze well at all. So these will definitely get frost nipped, but I already went through here yesterday, I think 2 days ago, and harvested a lot of green beans. I have a huge old pile. It looks like I missed maybe a couple, but I don't think there's too much to do here, so I'll just kind of comb through quickly and see what I missed. These little ones, like where they're almost big enough, I found that if I pick them too early, they just get soft in the crisper drawer. They don't store very well, so I don't like to pick them prematurely. So these guys might just be SOL, which is fine. I've had a fantastic green bean year. We're gonna be eating green beans for years at this point, so I'm cool with this being the end. But yeah, I'll go through and grab a little bit more, see what we can scrounge out of here. Okay, I found a few more, but not too much for the green beans. And as far as over here, so this is where my garlic was, so there's nothing here. I harvested that in mid-July, and I still need to plant garlic here in the next week or so for next year's garlic harvest. I just haven't had time to sit down and make my garden plan yet for next year's garden to even know where it's going. So more to come on that. Hopefully I'll get that done pretty quick here before it gets too late in the season. And then here are my potatoes. Those guys are fairly safe, tucked away. Same with the carrots. These guys are great. They can tolerate frost, no problems. And actually leaving them in the ground is great for me. It's kind of acting as a little refrigerator until I have more time and space to dedicate to getting these guys packed away. So they'll just hang out, but not too long. I don't want them to freeze in the ground. So next, let's move up to the big one. This is my main priority for today, and that is harvesting all of my butternut squash and the pumpkins. There are just tons in here, and we need to make sure that we're getting them cured properly so that they're gonna store well in storage all winter long. So let's dig in. So as far as tools go, don't even waste your time with tiny little snippers like this. This is my main one for harvesting butternut squash, and then the pumpkins, I like the big old loppers. Let's go ahead and get these big old pumpkins out of here first. I like to leave a slightly longer stem. These are my Cinderella pumpkins, and I just love them. And not only are they beautiful, but they taste really good. They store halfway decent, not as good as the butternut squash, but they'll last a few months for sure. All right, let's get this one out of here. It's kind of growing upside down. And I like to give it as much stem as possible, so down to the main vine, at least an inch, and never carry them by the handle. That's a sure way to stress the pumpkin, so always carry it like this. And I have one more in here, so just 3 pumpkins this year. I only grow 1 pumpkin plant. This will be plenty for Ryan and I. especially since pumpkins don't store quite as well as the butternut squash. There's no sense in growing a ton of them, just since we can only eat it so fast. Now the pumpkins were pretty easy. I only had 3 and they were all ripe and ready to go. But the butternut squash, there are a ton in here and not all of them are ripe. So I'm gonna show you what a ripe one looks like, one that's good enough, and then one that I'm just gonna leave and we'll see what happens. So these ones are looking great. They have a nice solid, you know, kind of a, I wouldn't call it brown, but it's brownish. It's not green at all. There's no stripes on there. You can see that the stems are browning, and yeah, these guys are just looking really good. So for sure picking these. And again, I like to leave as much stem as possible, so about 1 inch if I can. So there's that one and this one. And add to the wagon. Some of them are small, they're kind of cute, personal size. Okay, so here is a good example of maybe. You can see this is a fully ripe butternut squash here, where this one's still pretty pale. You can still see the light lines on there. This one might ripen in time. This one's kind of right on the edge. This one is a little bit closer to ripe, but not fully ripe. You can see that the stem still has some green tint to it. This one I'll definitely harvest. This one will ripen in time. This one, yeah, right. This one's definitely SOL. And same with this one. This one is just much too green. I'm just gonna leave it on the vine and we'll see what happens. There's plenty of other squash to enjoy. Woo-hoo-hoo! Well, I'll say that that was a pretty successful harvest. Definitely a good year for the butternut squash, so we'll definitely need to do a little washing. This is the only produce that I actually do wash before I put into storage. So we're gonna do that together. But before we do that, we just have a few more things to pick. All right, so we have summer squash, definitely not going to tolerate the frost very well. And this has also been slowing down. Looks like I have a couple in there. We have a little baby zucchini. I'll just leave that and see what happens. But let's go ahead and grab this big one. Perfect. This one's looking pretty good. I'll just throw this down by the squash for now. And then let's see. So over here are mostly my cold tolerant crops. So a lot of these are broccoli, which I've kind of let the broccoli side shoots flower at this point. Give the pollinators a last hurrah before winter hits. There's still some little side shoots that I'm harvesting, but broccoli for sure is going to tolerate the frost. We're going to let that go. Same with the kale. It'll be totally fine. Down here are my radishes and baby greens. These guys are looking pretty okay. And again, those will tolerate frost. Same with the kohlrabi. Ooh, I haven't been over here in a few days. Looks like my new fall plantings for broccoli are coming in well, so I'll be able to harvest those heads soon. My massive cabbage head that I've been singing its praises all summer, she is still growing. I haven't had the heart to harvest her yet. Probably pretty soon, but she'll tolerate the frost fine. The kale as well. Actually, kale tastes a whole lot better after a frost, so I'm excited. Definitely gonna leave that in. And same with the Brussels sprouts back here. These guys have been so-so this year. I've been talking about that in my garden tours. We're just really not getting that great of Brussels sprout development. They're still edible, but I mean, they're thumbnail size. So not sure what's going on the Brussels sprout front this year, but ooh, one other thing we do need to harvest, celery. So these guys are probably ready to go. And these I don't eat fresh all that much actually at all in the summertime because I usually use them for a soup base and we're not eating soup all that often in the summer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and harvest this whole plant, chop it up and actually freeze dry it. And then I can just use it for my cooking all winter. So let's go ahead and get these guys out. So usually I take a knife and harvest it at the base, but I didn't bring a knife out with me and it's getting cold, like my fingers are already kind of numb. So I'm just going to see if I can pull it out and then I'll trim it once it gets to the house. Oh yeah, not too bad. So just kind of shake some of the dirt off of there and bring this inside. Let's get the other one. Oh, I have 4. I thought I had 3 for some reason. Excellent. The more the merrier. All right, get those guys off to the wagon. Those turned out pretty good. Let's go ahead and bring the squash and the pumpkins back to the cabin so we can start the curing process. Okay, I have it all loaded up. I'd say that's a pretty good haul, and oh no. So I totally forgot about my secret garden over here. If you saw my September garden tour, you might remember. We're not done yet, boys and girls. I'm pretty sure that we have quite a few butternut squash over here. So this was my just whatever planting. There was a pile of dirt here. You can kind of see it. And I had some extra plants, so I just threw them in here so you can see. Actually, it looks like the chickens have helped me out on a few of them, but that one looks okay. There's definitely some up in here. So that one's salvageable for sure. Oh gosh, we've got more to go. Okay, so there was definitely a solid maybe 10 more butternut squash out there. And they're good sized ones too. So that kind of confirms my suspicion that I need to up my game on fertilizing a bit more in this spot. Just so many heavy feeders in one location, and this is a new garden. More to come on that. I'll be doing a soil test soon, and I'll make sure to bring you guys along the way. Okay, now let's bring them up to the house. So I almost forgot about my front garden beds. You can see I already protected my peppers in here, my prized peppers. I want them to keep going. So lettuces, those guys are gonna be good. But basil, oh yeah, right. Basil is probably the biggest wimp out there when it comes to frost. It doesn't even have to fully freeze and these guys will turn brown and everything. So it is on its last leg. They've definitely bolted a bit, but I might save some of the good leaves and then just let that be done. These guys are going to do great with the frost. I'm not worried about them. So these are my turnips, which are looking pretty good. I've already harvested quite a few in there. These are my wimpy little rutabagas. I'm really hoping that we're gonna get more growth there. We will see, so we're gonna let those guys go. These are strawberries. They come back every year. They'll be fine. Same with these guys over here. Chives, blueberries, rhubarb. These are all perennials. They'll just die back and come back in the spring. But herbs are something that I think I want to do one more harvesting on. These are all perennials as well. But once it freezes, the leaves won't be quite as good for harvesting. And I think I do want to dry a little bit more herbs. So the thyme, I'll go through, do one more harvest and let that die back. The rosemary may or may not come back. We'll see. This is my little experiment next to the house. I'm hoping the heat of the house might help it survive our Minnesota winter. We'll see, but definitely will want to harvest some of that. Over here is my lemon balm, my mint, my oregano. Probably do a little harvest from here. They'll come back next year. Lettuces again, they'll do fine. The sorrel down here is a new plant for me. It is technically a perennial, so we'll see if that one comes back. The parsley, I've already dehydrated a lot, but I might dry a little bit more. And parsley is a biannual, so it will technically come back next year, but it'll just largely go to seed. So I'll do new plants for next year. And then sage is also a perennial, so this one will come back, but the leaves, we want to make sure to harvest those before the frost. So we have some good leaves on here. I'll dry a little bit more before the frost hits tonight. Good morning. So we definitely froze last night. We got down to 30 degrees. So I'm glad that I went ahead and picked everything that I did. I did not end up washing and curing my squash last night because it was getting cold. It was already in the 40s and it was gloomy. And I looked at the forecast for today and it's gorgeous today. The sun's out, it's warm, relatively warm, 60s at least. So today is the perfect day for us to get in there and get the squash and the pumpkins ready to cure. So I just wheeled them out from the shop. That's where they were protected all last night while it was super cold. So let's go ahead and dive in. So my method for curing winter squash is a little bit different than pretty much anything else. When I'm curing onions or packing away carrots into long-term storage, or turnips and rutabagas and potatoes, I never wash them, but these I do, and it does make a difference. I've noticed better storage ability. So all I'm doing here is 1 part white vinegar and 4 parts water. We're just gonna eyeball it here. You gonna help, Roxy? You gonna help us? And that is pretty good. And I just like to use a washcloth, and ideally an old one that's kind of gritty is good. You don't want too much grit, right? We don't want to damage the exterior and the skins, but just a little bit of grip on that washcloth just helps it wash a little bit better. Looks like we have a little friend. Oh, honey, you're not going to want to drink that. That's a little potent. She might like it though. We'll see. Are you going to come back for more? She's like, I don't know about that. Nope, not a fan. Oh, honeys, you guys crack me up. So we'll just start working our way on down here. Nothing too fancy, just give it a little once over. Being careful if you're using a wagon like mine, because it can kind of cause some friction or even injury to the skins. The skins should be pretty hard as long as the squash is ripe, but even still, if there's too much pressure, it can cause some nicking and then they won't store as well. So if you do, no harm done, just make sure to put it aside and make sure to eat that one first. Oh, I tell you what, that sun feels good though. I'm enjoying it as much as I can. We are losing daylight hours fast. Before long, it'll just be light and no warmth, you know what I mean? Where the light will hit your skin, but you just don't feel anything. And that gets to me. I'm someone that loves sunshine. Just really boosts my mood and my energy. So winters get a little long around here. So I'm definitely enjoying every last little bit that we have. And here you may be able to see some discoloration on the bottom of the squash. This is where mud or dirt was stuck to it. And so you can see it's already kind of compromising the skin. So that's why I like to give them a good wash. It takes a little bit of time, but it's worthwhile. And it's pretty enjoyable if you find a nice weather day. I'm glad I waited a day. So just a few more to go. So let's go ahead and talk about next steps. So this is the washing step. They still need to be cured. So curing process, we want the skins to harden up even more to create a barrier to the outside environment and keep that moisture in the squash so it doesn't dry out and shrivel up. So we're gonna leave them out in the wagons, out in the sun as much as possible for the next 10 days or so. And I love to do it in the wagons because I can wheel it inside the shop anytime it gets a little cold. So I would say upper 30s at night. I would probably bring them in for the night and then make sure to bring them out during the day. So that'll really give them proper time to seal off, and then they go into storage. Now, I don't know, if you live in a really hot climate and it's blazing hot, you might want to cure them on a covered porch or something with a little bit of dappled sunlight. But here our sun is not very intense. It's waning away day by day. So I've had no problems curing in the sun, and I find that I do get a better cure in full sun, at least here in northern Minnesota. Well, I think that's it for this week's video. What we did not do together, because I've not gotten my act together, is plant garlic. I need to do it any day now, but the problem is I need to plan out my entire garden for next year so that I even know where to put it, and I'll probably have to clear out some things. I'm guessing it'll be where my corn is now before I can actually plant my garlic. So More to come on that, but if you're wanting some great tips on how to plant garlic, I have a really great video on it from last year. I'll make sure to link that video in the description so you can check it out if you'd like some of my tips for planting garlic. Also, if you are fairly new to gardening and this whole planning the garden out and creating a design and figuring out what plants go with what and what even growing zone you're in and where to buy seeds and all those decisions, if they're feeling overwhelming to you, I totally get it. I created a course called How to Plant a Garden Step by Step, and in that course I hold your hand throughout all the different steps in a really methodical, organized way, and I would love to have you. I'll put the link in the description. You can enroll for 10% off with my coupon code GARDEN, and I really think you'd find it helpful. And not only that, but I have a private students only discussion forum where we can chit chat in there and you can get one-on-one help from me. As always, thank you so much for being here and for your support. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next video.